Emma met Jake at a coffee shop on a Tuesday morning when the barista misspelled both their names on their cups. Emma and Jace found themselves laughing at the counter, and somehow that shared moment of absurdity led to a conversation that stretched until the afternoon. For the first 3 months, they were inseparable. Jake would text her good morning before she woke up and good night after she'd fallen asleep. Emma would bring him lunch at his office, and they'd spend entire weekends discovering new neighborhoods, trying restaurants, planning a future that felt as certain as gravity. But relationships, Emma learned, weren't governed by the same reliable laws as physics. The first crack appeared during a dinner party at Jake's friend's house. Emma was telling a story about her disastrous attempt at pottery class when she noticed Jake's expression, a subtle tightening around his eyes, a forced smile that didn't quite reach them. Later, in the car, he was quiet. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Nothing," he said, but his knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "It's just... do you have to be so loud? So much?" The word hung in the air between them like smoke. Much. Too much. Emma spent the rest of the drive home shrinking into herself, trying to figure out how to be less. From then on, she began editing herself. She'd start to tell a story and catch herself mid-sentence, scaling back her enthusiasm, measuring her laughter. Jake seemed happier, more relaxed, so she convinced herself this was love, this careful choreography of becoming smaller. But Jake was changing too, in ways that Emma couldn't see clearly at first. He'd started working late more often, texting less frequently. When she asked about his day, his answers became shorter, more distant. He began criticizing small things, the way she loaded the dishwasher, her choice of movies, her tendency to leave books scattered around his apartment. "I'm just trying to help you improve," he'd say when she looked hurt. Isn't that what people do when they love each other? Emma wanted to believe this was normal, that all couples went through rough patches. She watched her friends' relationships on social media, their carefully curated happiness, and wondered if she was expecting too much. Maybe love was supposed to feel like walking on eggshells, like constantly trying to solve a puzzle you didn't understand. The breaking point came on a Saturday night. Emma had planned a surprise dinner for Jake's promotion, candles, his favorite wine, the pasta dish she'd spent all afternoon perfecting. When he came home, he barely glanced at the table. "I'm not hungry," he said, scrolling through his phone. "And I never asked you to do this." "I thought you'd be happy," Emma said, her voice small. "Happy?" Jake looked up from his phone, his expression incredulous. "Emma, you can't just orchestrate my feelings. You can't fix everything with grand gestures and then act hurt when I don't react the way you want." "I'm not trying to fix anything," she said, but even as the words left her mouth, she knew they weren't true. She had been trying to fix things, fix him, fix them, fix the growing distance she felt but couldn't name. "Yes, you are," Jake said, and his voice was tired in a way that scared her. "You're always trying to fix things, to make everything perfect. But sometimes things are just broken, Emma. Sometimes people just grow apart." They stood in the flickering candlelight, the carefully prepared dinner growing cold between them, and Emma realized that they'd been having two different relationships for months. She'd been fighting to save what they had, while he'd been quietly letting it die. "So what now?" she whispered. Jake set down his phone and looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in weeks. "I don't know," he said, and for a moment, she glimpsed the person she'd fallen in love with in that coffee shop. "I honestly don't know." They tried couples therapy for a few sessions, but it only illuminated how far apart they'd drifted. Jake wanted space to figure out what he wanted. Emma wanted to fight for what they'd had. Neither approach was wrong, but they were fundamentally incompatible. The breakup, when it finally came, was oddly anticlimactic. No screaming, no dramatic declarations. Just Jake packing his things while Emma sat on the couch, watching 6 months of shared life disappear into cardboard boxes. "I'm sorry," he said at the door, and she could tell he meant it. "I really am." "Me too," Emma replied, and she was sorry for the ways they'd both failed each other, sorry for the timing that had brought them together when neither was ready, sorry for the love that hadn't been enough to bridge the space between who they were and who they needed to be. Months later, Emma would realize that their relationship hadn't been a failure, it had been a lesson disguised as love. She learned that caring about someone doesn't mean shrinking yourself to fit their expectations. She learned that you can't save a relationship by yourself, no matter how much you want to. Jake, she heard through mutual friends, had started dating someone new. Emma felt a pang of something, not jealousy exactly, but a kind of wistful sadness for the version of herself who had believed that love was enough to overcome anything. Now she knew better. Love wasn't enough without respect, without compatibility, without the willingness to grow together instead of apart. It was a hard lesson, but an important one. Emma kept the memory of that Tuesday morning in the coffee shop, when two strangers had laughed over misspelled names and felt, for a moment, like they'd found something special. They had found something special, just not something that was meant to last forever. And maybe, Emma thought as she finally felt ready to date again, that was okay too.